Hi, I'm Daryl Forte, owner of Everlast Software. Today I wanted to discuss the fact that files that get deleted are not permanently deleted in most cases. So most of us know about a recycle bin or a trash can. Most operating systems have a mechanism like that so that if you delete your files, you can go inside the recycle bin and undelete them and get them back. Well, what if I told you that even emptying the recycle bin has no impact on the actual file itself being deleted on your drive? So what happens is the operating system removes the link inside the file system to the file, but all the bits are still there. So you can use a free undelete program or a data recovery program to get all the bits back for the file. Now, the space where all those bits are is considered free by the operating system. So anything that comes along and overrides that area or part of that area can result in the file not being recoverable, or at least part of the file not being recoverable. The larger a drive is and the more free space it has, the more likely that you will be able to undelete it as time goes on, because all that extra free space is sitting there waiting to be used, so there's a greater chance that the operating system will pick some of the free space that didn't have existing files in order to write files to. So what does this mean? Well, what you need to do if you want to permanently delete a file on a typical mechanical hard drive is to use what's called an electronic shredder. So these are just software programs that open up the bits of the hard drive where the file is, and it overwrites it with special patterns or sometimes even just zeros or blanks, and then deletes the file. Now this doesn't necessarily work, or most likely won't work, on solid state drives. Solid state drives, there's different types. Some of them have what's called a trim command, which automatically deletes things on schedules or intervals determined by the hardware. Others may have that spot permanently used where you can't overwrite it again. And so in theory you could get back contents from a certain solid state drives forever. So just to let you know that there are some security concerns about that, and electronic shredders don't really work with them. Now, other types of things like flash memory can be similar as well, where if you overwrite it with an electronic shredder, there's no guarantee it is permanently destroyed. But for mechanical hard drives, pretty much it's a no-brainer to use it on those, and it will permanently delete the contents. Okay, so what do you do if you've already deleted the files in a regular manner? Well, you'd use electronic sanitizing or something that overwrites the free space or the empty space on the drive. And that can take quite a while to run depending on how much free space there is. There's free programs out there to do it, and then there's commercial ones that might do a little bit better job. So some other areas of concern when you're wanting to protect your information and not have any kind of evidence left behind is you need to look at what's called hibernation mode in Windows or maybe some other operating systems. Hibernation mode is one of the worst things for security if someone gets a hold of your computer. When you hibernate a computer, what happens is all the memory contents, all that random access memory gets dumped to permanent storage, i.e. your hard disk. It's a giant file of everything in memory. Well, a lot of programs don't use encryption in memory. Even secured programs most of the time have clear text passwords and all kinds of things in memory. So when you hibernate, all of that's sitting in a file on your hard drive. So if someone gets a hold of that knows what they're doing, they can reverse engineer and pull a lot of information out of it. So even if you're using an encrypted file system and you've just accessed some files and closed it, it's probably decrypted in memory. Even the encryption key of the hardware of a hard drive, for example, might be in memory. So I highly recommend don't use hibernation if you are very concerned about sensitive or private information that you have. Now also, every modern operating system has what's called virtual memory, and it'll utilize what's called a swap file. This is similar to hibernation, but instead of swapping everything from memory to a file, it only does things as you run low on physical memory, or if the operating system is trying to optimize things, even if you have enough physical memory, sometimes it'll write to that virtual file. Windows is notorious for this, so I always disable the swap file on my Windows machines, but you have to have enough RAM to do this. If you have 8 gigabytes of RAM, you might be able to get away with disabling the virtual memory and not run into a problem, but more likely you'd need 16 gig to be very safe to do this. Now, of course, it depends on how you use your computer. If you're using Photoshop and really heavy image and video editing software, then even 16 gig might not be enough. So what'll happen is if you run out of physical memory and you don't have a swap file because you've disabled it, on Windows you'll start getting system tray notifications saying that your computer's out of memory, and it's just going to start terminating things. So as the process is running, it runs low, it's just going to kill the process. So it could lead to corruption and all kinds of things. So just to make you aware of that fact. But if you do have enough memory and you know how to use your computer properly, you don't need the swap file, just disable it. You can do that under the control panel, buried under system. You'll find it in there. So another area which has hidden files, which electronic shredders don't have access to, on Windows in particular, is called the Windows Volume Shadow Copy. There's a couple services. There's a Microsoft Shadow Copy provider, and then there's Windows Volume Shadow Copy services. Those two services cause backups to work on Windows if you're using built-in Windows backups. It makes the system restore points work, so if you disable them, all that stuff's not going to work. It also makes it possible to copy files that are in use when it's enabled using a program like HoboCopy. So there are some caveats to disabling those services, but I recommend it once again if you are just dead set on trying to make your computer as safe as you can and have sensitive information that you don't want anybody to get access to. The next thing, and this is a performance optimization as well, is if you do have enough memory, like maybe 8 to 16 gig or higher, consider using what's called a RAM disk. The software that I recommend is called IMDisk, and what it does is creates a drive letter, just like your C drive. You'll get another drive letter that uses your RAM in your computer. What you want to do is then point the Windows temp folder. There's a tag under System Environment Variables where you'll see some temp tags. Point those to this RAM drive and any other kind of temporary directories that you can think of. What will happen then is Windows, as it's doing its thing and needing to do some work, it writes all these temp files out. Well, it's writing them to RAM. So it's not putting them in permanent storage. First of all, it makes your computer a lot faster because it's not having to hit an old hard drive. And if you have a solid state, it's not wearing out your solid state drive. But secondly, a lot of times Windows and other operating systems just do a terrible job of cleaning up temp files. So next time you reboot, because it's a RAM disk, RAM gets wiped out anytime you reboot. So a reboot cleans out all temp files immediately. Or if the power goes out, all those temp files are gone immediately. So that's an added bonus. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about here is most operating systems have little hidden caches and temp files, which is why I was telling you to use a RAM disk, that appear when it does previews on images and all kinds of things. So what I have here is the image on the left is Windows. It's Windows 10. And if you notice, I hovered down on the taskbar at the bottom and it shows some image screenshots of the apps that are open. Sometimes Windows will make little temporary JPEG files and write it to disk when it does this. Or if it's virtual memory, like I was saying before, the swap file, it may have little snapshots of these written to disk. Well, forensic and police have sometimes used little screenshots of these things to get evidence against criminals. I'm not saying, you guys are criminals or you're doing criminal activity, but if you had a little window open that showed your social security number and all kinds of things like that, that's sensitive, it could be creating a little image screenshot of that and saved to disk. If someone gets a hold of it, they may be able to pull those little JPEG images out and get information that they could normally get. On the right side here, I show a screenshot of an Android device. Android, if you're familiar with those, when you minimize apps and you say show me the apps that are in use or that are open in memory, you'll get, once again, little screenshots. So what I was going to tell you is make sure if you're ever on a website or in an app that has sensitive information, before you minimize it, make sure you clear the screen or navigate away. That way, if it does create one of these little bitty images that are hidden, it's not going to be stored in the device that way. And finally, another thing I want to talk about, a hidden area, is once again in Windows, and other operating systems may have a similar mechanism, but it's called the Windows Search Database. So if you go into your services under Control Panel and Administrative Tools, go into Services, you'll see down toward the bottom something called Windows Search or Windows Searching. That service is enabled by default. What it does is it scans your whole hard drive or multiple hard drives, and it's pulling out keywords and all kinds of things that it can put into this database. Why is it doing that? Well, so then when you use a Windows search and you're looking for a phrase, let's say I'm looking for the word Everlast, it will quickly hit this Windows database, find all results that have all files that have the word Everlast in it, and give you the results. So it speeds up searching. That's the only purpose of this. I personally don't use Windows Search at all. If you do, you don't have to have Windows Search service enabled to still search. You can disable this service and this database file won't be used. Now if you had it enabled and it already did its thing, you're going to notice when you go there and disable, the file's still there. So you want to electronically shred that file and get rid of it. But where you can locate it is under your hard drive, which mine's C. You see Program Data, Microsoft, Search, Data, Applications, and then Windows. The file inside there is called windows.edb. And if you have a really old version of Windows, you may not have the database in this spot. And it could be called the indexing service under Windows Services. But it will also have its own database, and you'll have to find it in that case. But all modern versions of Windows will be using this file. And it's a dream for anybody data mining and hackers, because all I have to do is copy this file and I can get all kinds of information out, even if you deleted or shredded the original file. So I hope this helps you with some tips and understanding on how to properly dispose of files and how to clean things up and help make your system more secure.